Welcome. Thanks for coming back on the show, man. The last
No
episode
problem.
was really good, dude. I really enjoyed our last episode. I think it was a really good conversation about the push up into Iraq and kind of your guys' role and all that and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I actually reached out to Gordon Dillo, the
Yeah,
the
you
reporter.
emailed, told me. Yeah.
Oh, did he? Cool. Yeah, I spoke to him. So
Yeah.
we're gonna
Um,
set up a time. We were gonna record one day, but he's like up in the mountain. I guess where he lives is up in the mountains. So he didn't have very good
Arizona.
connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna set up a different time when he's at some family's house and sit down and kind of go over with him. And I think that'll be a really interesting conversation because one, he's a Vietnam vet, which I think he says like he didn't really do anything. He was an MP, whatever. Everybody downgrades their own service, but he has that perspective. So he kind of understands how the military works. But he went there with you guys as an observer, as a neutral observer. He wasn't
Yeah.
part of the big green machine or anything like that. He was just there kind of
No.
watching. So it'll be interesting to kind of bounce off the stories we talked about with I don't know, and kind of compare and contrast because we're pulling out of Afghanistan almost all the way now. Like Iraq is,
Mhm.
I think we left Iraq in a better spot than we did Afghanistan. At least Iraq is
Yeah.
kind of somewhat.
At
I don't know,
least
maybe not.
Saddam's not there.
Yeah, maybe not though. ISIS took over for a little bit. I don't even know what's going on in Iraq right
Um,
now. I know our troops are getting bombed every once in a while by Iran and stuff, but
yeah.
that's a super
Yeah.
bummer.
Most of those are just security forces around the I think the embassy complex and some quick reaction forces. That's about it from what I understand, though. Unless you go
Yeah,
to Eastern or I'm sorry, Western Iraq, then there's still some stuff there with Syria and all that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. There's always got to be some kind of presence there just to keep that, like the ISIS types, I guess,
Uh,
tamped down and keep
yeah.
the military industrial complex fed. Got to keep the innovations
That's
coming
it,
out from
man.
continuing it on. So we,
And we're
did you,
still in Okinawa and Germany.
yeah. And I guess I kind of get that after World War II. Like it was a different time then because, we were legitimately trying to take those countries over because they were trying to
Yeah.
legitimately take over the world. And now it's kind of like, it's nothing like that. It's not a global threat. I mean, there is the global threat, but it's not like at the same scale as Imperial Japan and
No,
their
no,
Navy
not at
rolling
all.
up to your back door,
Yeah.
Man, what
Yeah.
a weird time that would have been and they would have even had the information to understand what's really happening. Like
Yeah.
radio
Slow.
radio reports, maybe seeing stuff at the movie theater because they had those newsreels and stuff like that they would
Yeah.
show. So, but yeah, anyways, like I was saying, I talked to Gordon Dillo, so he's going to come on at some point and we'll talk about that. And I think we pretty much got through your entire march up to
Yeah, we
Baghdad
got
and the completion of
yeah,
Iraq.
and then yeah.
I did want to ask you though, because and here's something I've been kind of thinking about recently. You were an enlisted guy, went to office, and became an officer later on, so you might have a different perspective. I'm going to ask this to a few officers, in the future as I have them on. Is there any reason today why we should still continue to require officers to have a 4-year degree from a university in 2021, where only 25% of our population goes to college, but a lot of our population is lived experience going, maybe not going to college, but becoming an entrepreneur or, doing a million other things. Don't we also think that those are good candidates or possible candidates for OCS? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think having a 4-year degree makes you any better or worse than anybody else. I think personally that the Marine Corps should evaluate individual enlisted and maybe some incoming programs like ROTC or something like that. But I think having an enlisted commissioning program, not the ones they send you necessarily to college,
Mm-hmm.
but to grabbing those leaders, those young leaders with to know how to lead and know the Marine Corps and the world as well, and can commission them, pending maybe something else that the Marine Corps wants to do. But having 4 more years of underwater basket weaving makes me no better than some corporal
Yeah.
who's been to 2 combat deployments at all. But it is what it is right now. So
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I understand. I mean, I have friends right now that are in MESEP that are attending different colleges. I think one's at Penn State,
yeah,
one's at Auburn, and they're out
yeah,
there. And I didn't know this. When you go through MESEP, you give up your GI Bill benefits. Like you're using your GI
I
Bill
did.
benefits.
Wow. Well,
Yeah, I
they're
thought.
paying for everything. Get it.
Yeah.
E5 pay, and then you get or whatever the rank is. I got E5 pay going with my Montgomery GI Bill, but
I think
you have
they
to throw it
get
out
staff sergeant or gunny pay. I think automatically if you're a sergeant, you get accepted to MESEP.
if
I
you're
think I think you're
set
non. What is it called?
deployable or
No, it's a non-competitive promotion, meaning like
mm,
as soon as you get selected, you're promoted, kind of deal. I
yeah,
think it's something like that. I could be wrong, but yeah,
yeah.
it
I
just
mean,
doesn't. It just for me. I'm like, what does it make sense in 2021 where I can learn almost everything you can learn out of college, except for some of the hands-on stuff, through like YouTube or different programs
yeah,
or social media, getting groups together and stuff like that. It's just something I feel like maybe I don't know. We're maybe we're sending the wrong people to OCS sometimes.
yeah,
We're giving people
yeah,
a position of power just because, like you said, an underwater basket weaving degree is what they went for, and
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I just wonder what
I
your
mean,
thoughts were.
yeah, I understand. Like the U.S. Navy has nuclear engineers, and they have to have a degree
For
and an
sure.
officer. And I understand that because that's just specific. But
Mm-hmm.
between me and you, I've seen plenty of um, you know enlisted that could have made great officers, and
Yeah.
I've seen some officers that didn't make very good officers, and that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah, and it seems like that was kind of all the way up until Vietnam. Like battlefield promotions were a thing. Like they make someone an officer on the battlefield if they needed like a lieutenant or someone to lead a group of people.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something I'm gonna ask more people about that to come on the podcast. So if you're an officer and you come on the podcast in the future,
yeah.
expect that question to come up
You
because
ready?
I just don't I just don't understand why in 2021 why we still do that. Like maybe maybe 100 years ago, okay, I get it because the education. I mean, maybe I don't know. I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
I
So,
know.
and I know your
Yeah,
perspective because you were enlisted and you were an
yeah,
officer and you've been into combat. So you've seen
yeah.
good leadership. You've probably seen bad leadership in combat
Oh
and
yeah.
in the rear,
Anywhere.
and a degree doesn't help with being a good or bad leader. So
No, but yeah, I know it is what it is, I guess.
it is what it is. So
Yeah.
once you came back, we'll go back to your story. And for those that haven't listened, they need to go back and check out the last episode. I think it was episode 116. Let me pull it up real quick and double check that, and hear that story of you talk 113. Actually, it was a little bit farther back. Um, yeah, they need to go back and hear you talk about that march up and stuff because it's really interesting perspective and having that. I don't know, just that first-hand stories of like what the actual fight was like. Because there was a lot of boredom, right, and then
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of crazy
Yep.
excitement and like just
Yeah.
stuff that where guys had to step up and I'm sure there were
Make it
moments
happen.
where you were like super proud of your guys for like
Oh
doing
yeah.
what they were trained to do and stuff like that. Any of those you want to share or
Well,
that stick out?
I mean, that the whole time I think all the Marines around us, for the most part, just stepped up
Yeah.
and made it happen. And that's one thing about the Marine Corps. We're not special forces. I mean, there are now,
Mm-hmm.
but overwhelming majority of U.S. Marines aren't. But with what I always thought was great is those Marines want to be in combat, at least most of them, and they outperform
Mm-hmm.
people's expectations. I knew some Marines that when we were training, I was like, this guy's going to combat. Oh my
Yeah.
God. And they got there totally 180 and how they paid attention. They did what they had to, weapons, the whole thing. And a lot of them stepped up and made great field Marines, combat Marines. And that's what I like. I just looking back on, man, look at these Marines.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'd see other units, you know, I'm not going to go into inter service type stuff. You'd see some dirtbags out there though, and that it is what it is, I guess. But there are different units. But for the Marines that I knew and I was around, man, they just stepped up and made it happen.
What's really awesome about that too is that almost none of these people have had combat experience because this is the invasion. So before
Yeah,
that, there were some guys
yeah,
in Bosnia or something.
yeah.
Things
There was
like
some of
that.
that, and there was a couple. There was one of the lieutenants who got who's in our company. He was a Desert Storm, and former enlisted saw gunner in Desert Storm, but there was a few. Our gunny had seen combat, I think, in Grenada, and then our first sergeant saw some action or was sitting in Lebanon in the early '80s. But other than that, we were green as hell, every one of us.
So how did that, you guys went in and did the job and stuff like that. When you came back, when you were coming back for another deployment, we'll fast forward now. You bounced around a little bit, right? You left you left and went to FSSG, correct?
Yeah, I went to the first Force Service Support as my B billet as a TIO, and TIO is Target Information Officer, and the FSSG does no targeting at all.
Yeah.
So it was me and an infantry major in our little shop, and basically we helped train, some of these Marines that were going overseas, like to sit at Tacadam in the COC or to do maintenance, and we'd have some field training time with them, and that's kind of what we started to do. Of course, there's all kinds of secondary billets, from investigations I had to do on people losing, TS stuff, and then all kinds of stuff like that. And that's what most of it was. Most of it was paperwork and this and that, and with a little bit of training, Marines that were going to Iraq or Afghanistan.
Do you get any sway on where you go for your B billet? Because I can't imagine that was your first choice.
No, it wasn't at all. It wasn't my any choice. But I let my XO know it. Of course, he knew, but but I didn't have a choice. So, I went there, and I was supposed to be a 3-year billet. I was there for about 6 months, and then I get a phone call from my old battalion XO, and he's like, "Hey, ANGLICO is doubling their size. They need officers with combat experience. You still able to go?" I was like, "Hell yeah, I want to go." He's like, "If you do, it's going to be 2 more deployments to Iraq, back to back." He's like, "And you have to get permission from your OIC." And no problem. So I talked to Major Maples at the time, and he, no problem, as long as they fill you, as long as they give somebody to replace me, because he was going to do some of the stuff I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, I talked to the monitor's like, "Yeah, no problem. There's plenty of people who come back from overseas and they want to sit at a desk." And so they did that, and I showed up to the first FSSG in, I was like August of 2004, and then I got my orders and executed orders in April of 2005. So I was in there a year, thank God, and nothing against them, but I didn't want to be there at all. I wanted to go back overseas. So.
There's a war going on. You don't want to ride a desk while the war's going on.
I know. No, man. And, you don't want to do that. That's how it is. Yeah.
And that's just a different mentality. Like, that's just kind of a different world, being with the support side of the Marine Corps. And I could tell you, being as a mechanic for a few years, kind of dealing with that. It's just the way people, I don't know, the way people do things is just different. There's like fake motivation there. Yeah. There's like a lot of depression there because people don't understand their piece in the big, role of things sometimes and stuff like that. It's just not as fun.
It's different. No, it's not. Yeah, but it is, I know.
So when you
moved, I'm gonna say about that.
When you moved over to First Anglico, was this were they expanding it, or would they standing it up? Because they moved
expanding it. It was already first. They went from MLE, and then it became First Anglico. Yeah. Before I came there, they was officially stood up to First Anglico again, and then I showed up because they were going from 1 brigade platoon to 2 brigade platoons, so they doubled their size, and that's what they needed officers, and they wanted them with some overseas experience. And back then, they were taking, 0302s, infantry officers. They were taking artillery officers, obviously, FACs that need their FAC time. And then they're also taking armor officers, and then obviously infantry officers as well, like I said.
Yeah, that's...
so we actually had a couple tankers, and we didn't have any Amtrackers, but we had some tankers. We had quite a few infantry officers, and then artillery, and then some FACs. But it was the way I liked it. I like seeing all those infantry guys there. I like seeing the armor guys there. If they had some fire support experience, which all of them did, 5th team leaders or whatever the case. So.
Yeah, it's good having all those different backgrounds under one roof, because you can, if you have a question about armor or something, just go down the hall and pick that dude's brain. It's not really the case nowadays. Now it's basically all artillery and pilots, but I'm all about bringing more infantrymen into, even as enlisted guys, just to kind of come in and help train dudes, help give them that kind of experience. Because a lot of times people expect you to fall in and do infantry skills, and it's like, dude, and they have to have someone teach them those skills because no one in the unit's
Yeah,
infantry.
exactly. No, that's why I thought it was pretty neat. I don't know when they changed it back from that, but it was open to all combat arms officers.
Yeah. So when you got there, you knew you were rolling into a couple deployments and stuff like that. This was probably like a really high paced time for First Anglico. Like what was going on at the company. And for those maybe that don't know that, so for those that don't know that haven't served with Anglico or anything like that, Anglico is a small unit. When I was there, it was 160 people. That was 2 brigades, which is like 2 units of teams. Each one of those brigades has 2 teams on it. Each one of those teams is like 19 people. So you're talking about 38 people per brigade on teams. I don't know. It's really small breakdown of that 160.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how the same breakdown was for you guys? And how were you guys training?
Technically you had, SALT Alpha and Bravo in 1st Brigade, and the 2nd Brigade would be SALT or Supporting Armed Liaison Team, Charlie and Delta in 2nd Brigade. And then you had the brigade headquarters personnel, and then you had the SALT, and the SALT obviously consisted of the SALT personnel and then 2 firepower control teams for each one. And that's how we were broken down. But back then, they needed JTAC, so they were sending off a lot of different people to JTAC. I mean, the CO went to JTAC school. And it was the brigade platoon commander, which obviously should be. But I mean, the company commander went to JTAC course. And so I think because they just wanted JTACs in country. They wanted a lot of JTAC, so they were taking, and all these things. Cool things about Anglico is you probably know is ABC or Anglico Basic Course. Everybody in Anglico takes that from the comms. Well, the comms is a big part of it, but the comm officer to supply personnel, whatever the case is, they all went to the basic course. And then when I went over both times, they all got divvied up into provisional FIC teams, if you will, and because they were working on a lot of those skills too, combat skills, patrolling skills, comm, fires, the whole thing.
Yeah, they did run an ABC while I was there, but when I got there, I showed up and I checked in on Friday and then checked out on Monday to start my workup. So I didn't do ABC. But I think they had stopped it for a little bit just because of personnel reasons. I don't know if they had enough people or, there was a high tempo continued on. But then they picked it up. I remember when I got back from that deployment, they had a class that they were getting ready. The new group of people coming to Anglico had all set up their firepower control teams and stuff like that and did the competitions and stuff. I think that's a really good thing, man. It kind of brings everybody to the same level, gives you an idea of what everybody's job is because it touches on not just fire support and comms, but motor T, and doing stuff like that and, little things. So, were you guys doing a lot of like actual field training and stuff like that, or was it all just going out and just dropping bombs?
We were going to Yuma all the time, and then Yuma we were doing convoy ops, patrolling, we were shooting all the time. We were always, not just artillery and air. We're talking to small arms, machine guns, M4s. We just got rid of the M16s, and we got M4s with all the attachments, the ACOGs, the EOTechs, all this equipment just dumped to us right before that deployment, and we had to get to know how to use it. But Yuma was a good time. We were up there, and we were doing a lot of patrols. They get a lot of FIC time. So me and my guys were going up the hills, setting up OPs, patrolling, all that stuff. And then we're doing brigade training, convoy ops. And it wasn't exactly what you did in country, because in country back then, you didn't get out and perform security on a convoy. You stayed in the vehicle, unless you're, depending on the situation. But a lot of times, if you stopped, you stayed in the vehicle for the most part. But there was differences, but it was all great training. I mean, a lot of PT, a lot of humps, ruck runs, in boots and utes, weapons, the whole thing. It was a lot of training. It was good. Of course, I had to do the JTAC primer and then the JTAC course too. So
yeah. And for those that don't know, Anglico doesn't normally support like Marine Corps units. They either support like Army units or foreign units or something like that when they're going forward, and they're definitely not going to have their own battle space. So did you guys know who you were going to support at that time, or was that just getting ready to go?
Now, roughly we knew, 2nd Brigade, you're going into Ramadi, supporting the the second brigade of the 28th, or the second battalion of the 28th Combat Brigade, that was in charge of Ramadi at the time. So we knew that we were going to support them. We didn't specifically know which battalions or companies we were supporting until we got in country. And then the other platoon, the other brigade platoon, got kind of sparsed out. They weren't so much one area. Some guys were in Fallujah, some guys were out west in Heat, some guys were down south. So those guys were spread out. But all the second brigade, for the most part, went to Ramadi. It was just split up between where we're at and Ramadi you went.
Now, when you guys get split up like that, does the brigade platoon commander, the brigade platoon staff, do they just kind of create their own SALT and do their own thing, or are they actually still trying to have a little bit of command and control and shape the battlefield for their guys that are out there moving around?
Yeah, I think it's a both. I think it's a both because they did, like, say, my brigade commander back then was then Major Grice. Now Lieutenant Colonel Grice retired, but so he was JTAC qualified. He had a team, and they used to do ops at night with some of the units that needed help. There was a lot of JTACs. They wanted JTACs everywhere. So, but then he was also cognizant of, well, what operations you doing. Send me the scheme of maneuver, the basics, and then when we're done with missions, we had to send back after action reports, so that whoever reads them, I think they sent them up to the company.
Yeah.
And they, so I'm not sure who read those, or if anybody even read them, but we had to send those reports up.
They're sitting on a hard drive somewhere, unread.
Somewhere still, yeah.
A lot of lost sleep going, instead of having sleep, you can do after actions. So for your team, what was your role specifically? Were you a FIC leader? Were you a SALT lead? Like, what was your role on the team? And then how was your makeup?
I was a FIC team leader, firepower control team leader. So I was obviously it was a 4-man team. Before we left, I had 2 corporals and a lance corporal. So I had 2 0861s and then one 06. What is a basic communicator?
0621.
0621. But then in country, they all got promoted. So I had 2 sergeants, and they were freaking outstanding NCOs. And I had a corporal as well, which just got promoted. He was young, but he was aggressive and smart. And man, it was just I had my team chief, Mike Anderson. I had my comms chief, Chad Dyer, and then my other 0861 was John Curidan, and they were outstanding Marines. And Dyer had been in Anglo for a while. His firepower control team leader the year in Fallujah, he was in the second attack in Fallujah, got wounded, and they were working, supposedly, that's what he told me, they were working with some NSW or Navy SEALs or Naval Special Warfare teams in Fallujah, and he got mortared and got some shrapnel, but Dyer was with them when that happened. And then my team chief, he was a former 82nd Airborne guy, became a Marine. He was mature, smart, he great at fires, and I got lucky. I think the best thing that happened to me is I got that team, because they really made it all happen. They're outstanding Marines.
For three as a 4-man team, that's a pretty good amount of experience. In 2005, having guys like that on there, especially having a guy that was in Fallujah for that. I bet there was a lot of lessons learned. Coming out of that and stuff.
I leaned on.
Go ahead.
I leaned on him quite a bit about stuff because, my experience in Iraq was as an invasion force, which is completely different than counterinsurgency.
For sure.
So some of the stuff that they were doing last time, how'd y'all do it then? Oh, we had it here and there. So you learn to rely on that experience regardless of rank.
Yeah, for sure. So when you got back into country, now you're going back for the second time, and like you said, your first trip there was as part of the invasion force. That's done. Yeah. Now you're there as the occupying force, or whatever you want to call it, there to just take care of the fighters. What was kind of going through your mind on your way back? Like, oh man, I can't believe I'm going back. Or were you like, yeah, let's do this. I'm super pumped. I'm glad I did this.
I think I was pumped. I mean, I was leaving behind my wife, relatively newly married, but other than that, I was pumped, man. I was a Marine, a young Marine captain with freaking 3 great Marines in a great unit. It's kind of naive, I guess, but we wanted to be there. We wanted to make it happen.
How was it different? Like when you got back or when you're coming back into Iraq now for the second time, where now there's kind of a pretty good established footprint, bases are established, there's things happening, like a lot of support available and stuff like that. How was Iraq like different then compared to the invasion? Like what was going through your mind? Like, holy shit, there's a subway here, you know, like.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so we flew into Kuwait, and then we got on C-130s in Kuwait and flew to Al Asad. And Al Asad is a big base, but we weren't allowed to really go out anywhere. We're there, and the next day we're heading out via convoy to our different locations. So we didn't have a chance to really go sightseeing in Al Asad, but later on we saw it. But I heard about it. I was like, what? Coffee shops?
Yeah, green bean. What?
You can call. You have internet. You have all kinds of the DFAC chow halls, which were great.
Yeah,
those big bases, and that was completely different. I had snail mail, which is no different than my dad when he was in Vietnam, or my grandfather in World War II. And snail mail during the invasion. But here is, I can instant message my wife. 2 hours later, I'm on a patrol. But I don't think we didn't really like that. She didn't like that as much because you're like, I just talked to him, and then what if I don't hear from her for a while? Because you go on what do they call it when they cut off communication? River City, and I was gonna say River Phoenix, but obviously that's not it. River City, and she couldn't hear from me for a couple of days. So what is she thinking? So there's some good and bad to it, but overall I think it made things a little bit easier to hear, your wife's voice every few days.
Yeah,
a little bit longer.
That's exactly right too, because I remember being there in 2009 and at TQ. And we were living in the cans or the chews, depending on where you were at, what people called it, the little containerized housing units. And we had Wi-Fi, I think, or we had the ability to get internet. And I know one of the kids was there. It was like, yeah, I call my wife every night. Like I talk to her every day. And I'm like, dude, that's not smart. Like, what if you have to, like you said, like, what if you get pulled on? Because we were mechanics, so it wasn't like we're out doing crazy shit. But every once in a while, someone got pulled and was like, hey, man, there's this convoy going to wherever. You're going to jump on and be the mechanic, and you may not be back for like 3 weeks. I'm like, what happens if you do that? They're going to think something's wrong, and some people don't see it that way, man. Plus, part of the good thing about a deployment is you're so separated from what's going on back home that you can just focus on what you're doing. And if you're calling someone constantly and getting updates from all the minutia, all the bullshit that doesn't matter from back home, exactly. Turn that shit off, man. You got a job to do. That's So, all right. So you guys get to Iraq, and now it's time. You're there with your team. You guys all show up, and then you go break off into your different elements. Had you worked with any of these people before? Did you guys do any training ops in the States before you went to Iraq with this infantry unit, this Army infantry unit?
No, not at all. No, we didn't, because they were on their own rotation, and we went in there at the end of August of 2005, and we switched out with 2nd Anglico, and we went to Ramadi. So my team and the rest of the brigade, obviously went to Camp Ramadi or Junction City, however you want to call it. And then we started our, 2 days of left seat, right seat. That's what it was, about 2 days of left seat, right seat. And you get going. They start briefing you. Right when you get there, the first thing you're doing, classes. 15 leaders are talking to 15 leaders. Team chiefs are talking to team chiefs. All that stuff. We're going over all of it. And because we didn't have very long. We didn't get a 2 week or a 1 week left seat, right seat. We got a couple days. And so I got there the next day. I was switching over with a gunnery sergeant German from 2nd Anglico. Outstanding.
He's a legend.
Yeah, and we switched off with him. So I went on he told me, he's like, hey, I got a patrol going out with the Pennsylvania National Guard soldiers. Do you want to go tomorrow? I was like, heck yeah. So so next morning, I went up there, just me, because I was riding with his team, because we haven't done the gear switch over yet. Went out there on a patrol and the debrief and the op order and everything, and it was different. It wasn't the invasion, at all, and it was just different. That's what we were there to learn, and it was first night, a couple pop shots, right? I'm out there, some pop shots, but that's it. But like you said before, look for IEDs and trash. Well, the whole damn place is trash. There's trash everywhere. Everything looks dangerous. Everybody wants to kill you, looks like. And you just deal with it and you move on, and you have to deal with the Army units, which sometimes they're tougher to read, or they did things completely different than we do.
Mm-hmm.
But as Anglico, you got to get in there and mix it up and ask questions and pull it from them, because they're to support. If you just sit there and tell them, God, you guys are dirtbags, I didn't understand any of this stuff, they're not going to use you.
Yeah.
And you're going to sit around and you need to be out there with them and talking to them, because it's easy to pick and find negative stuff. But those are the men that are out there day in and day out patrolling on entry control points, all that crap. And they don't want some Marine officer to come over telling them that they're shitbags.
Yeah.
Because they weren't. They're just trying to get it done, and different than the Marines, that's for sure. But you got to jump in there and support them.
Did you find it difficult? Did you find it difficult to integrate into these patrols? Because if you guys didn't train with them before, then that means they're not used to operating with you there. Now you're like an extra dude on the patrol that they don't know who you are. So they're probably like, who's this guy? Do we got to watch out for this guy? And you're probably like, do I got to watch out for this guy? So did it take a little bit of time to like kind of, mesh together and really kind of come together and work together?
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes you had that time. Sometimes you didn't. Hey, you're going on patrol. You're with this company. And a lot of times you would just kind of, okay, I'm gonna attach myself to their FSO, their fire support officer, and so for communications, or with the CO, and that's how you started kind of doing it before they could trust you. Going out, look, I need to be with your first platoon as the main effort. I don't need back to be here. I want to be the closest man to the fire, so I know what the closest friendly units are if I had to call in air,
Yeah.
And you just got to push it up there and be open-minded. That's what Second ANGLICO obviously did that. They're professionals, everything at least I could tell. So it was just having to deal with the units, and then having to deal with the ROEs, because one of the first things they say is like, hey, you're not dropping a bomb in Ramadi. You gotta get some general officer to sign off on it. And as that stuff happens fast, and you don't have time for to get approval from General Mattis, to drop a bomb in the middle of Ramadi. And that's some challenges we started reaching, but then we started doing some different things we can talk about later that circumvented those concerns. If we do, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, you were in Ramadi in 05, right? That's when you guys got there at the end of 05?
Yeah. Well, in August of 05. Yeah.
Okay. So this was like a hot time for Ramadi. 05, 06. Really this was like one of the worst times, and probably one of the worst places to be in the country was in Ramadi at that time. And you guys couldn't get a bomb?
They didn't want you dropping bombs, but we could do gun runs. We could do LMAV, and then we could do, all the rotary wing ordnance you could do, but just that bomb, you couldn't do it. If you did, you had to have permission. And so we started requesting aircraft with 2 LMAVs instead of a 500-pound bomb and 1 LMAV and then some cannon fire. We started, or getting a rocket pod, because as you know, those Harriers can have rocket pods they can attach to them and shoot those and stuff. So we started moving at that, and we started getting some controls, such stuff that I'm surprised maybe at the time Second ANGLICO didn't do, or the air wasn't allowed to do those requests, or whatever the case is. But we started changing it up, and we started getting some ordnance off aircraft.
You got to get creative, man. You got to think outside the box, stay within the rules, play by the rules, but be the most effective and quick as possible.
Yep. You got to keep your honor clean, but you can bend the rules a little bit. And
I mean, that's crazy. They'll let you drop LMAVs, which for those that don't know, it's a laser Maverick. That's a pretty significant warhead on that. That's normally for taking out tanks and stuff, but you can hit multiple things with it.
Oh, you hit a building, they're shooting at you from a building. You put a LMAV in the building, just like you would Hellfire. It's just a little bit, I think, more ordnance, more explosives than a Hellfire is, but not by much.
Were you guys using at this time? Did they have the low collateral damage bombs like the GBU 54 V4?
No,
nothing like that.
Smallest bomb they had was the GBU 12, the 500-pound bomb.
Okay.
That's the GBU 12, correct? It's been a while since I was at JTAC.
Yeah, it's 10 is 2,000 pound, 12 is 500, and 16 is 1,000.
That's it. Yeah, and they show up with them, but it's the operations out in the rural area. But so you have cannons, and you have LMAVs. So
I never understand, and I don't really get when you can have a precision fires, like a precision thing, like a GPS. God, man, I'm sorry, I'm blanking out for a
No
second.
problem.
A GPS
Yeah,
guided bomb come in.
precision-guided ordnance,
Have a precision guided munitions like a GPS guided bomb come in, or you can come in with 5-inch rockets and guns. I think I would take the bomb because the 5-inch rockets and guns, the beaten the beaten zone of that's going to be all over the place.
Yep, exactly.
I mean,
I think it's some big brain scientist somewhere says, well, these are more dangerous. Here's a collateral damage for a 500-pound bomb versus a rocket. But you're not shooting one rocket at a time to one point area. It's an area fire. Rockets are area fire weapons
for sure,
and not a precision. But same thing with get a Harrier and then do a gun run with their 25 millimeter. That's all over the place too.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, but what it doesn't do is CNN can't report that American forces bombed buildings in Ramadi. You can say there's some strafing, there's some precision, help, but you get that CNN factor, and I think that's what a lot of it was.
Yeah.
Because that whole place was a crap hole, and you're not gonna. Nobody in Ramadi was cared about if the next building got blown up.
Yeah.
Those people were living in frickin'.
A lot of people may not realize too, like in Ramadi in 05, all the fighters from Fallujah in November of 04, everyone that left Fallujah, a lot of them went to Ramadi. So that became like the next huge spot. So all the guys that didn't hang around Fallujah and get killed by the Marines and soldiers that were there went over to Ramadi and started causing trouble there. So you guys were in for it. Were you able to get artillery fire?
Outskirts, you could.
Not in the city, huh?
Not just in the city. You could do, not in the city. You weren't getting it because they didn't have the any precision-guided artillery or mortars. You could get some mortars. The 120s we called for and eventually got approval for at the soccer stadium in Ramadi. But they were shooting 155 Paladins out of Camp Ramadi for their counter battery, for their terrain denial, and for normal call for fire operations. But all those went more in the rural areas, because there's no precision to that at all.
Yeah. Outside of the rules of engagement, what was like your biggest issue as a fires guy in Ramadi?
Man, that was it really, because the contact was there as long as they shot at you. IEDs you can't do anything about, but most of it was the 500-pound bomb we had to get approval for. A lot of times it needed it, and that was the biggest one there. Even we started doing having to do flybys or show of force, with F-18 or Harrier or F-16. You still get complaints. Hey, the Blue Diamond, which was where the headquarters for the 1st Marine Division was, which is in Ramadi too, just out kind of on the outskirts. Hey, we got calls from Blue Diamond, want to know why we're bringing in air for a show of force. Well, because I can't drop a 500-pound bomb on them, so I'm going to try to scare Haji into going away. So you do everything you can.
Yeah.
Maybe there, hey, let me try to bring a low pass. Maybe those will kind of get them off us for a little bit and
be like, hey, I don't know if you guys forgot, but we're fighting out here. There's a fight. There's a fight going on.
I know. I know you're here with the IEDs going off all the time. Those aren't bombs. Those are insurgent weapons, not us.
Was that shocking to come back and see the usage of IEDs? Because that wasn't really something you guys had to deal with during the invasion. That wasn't a thing. So
I read about. I remember I was in Okinawa in spring of 2004. And just watching that whole uprising happen, and IED, that's when the whole roadside bombs, before they gave it the military nomenclature, but it was roadside bombs blowing up, and that's when you started noticing that you're like, well, this is what we're fighting, But it was different. Everything looked like it's going to blow up. There's holes everywhere in the road. There could be an IED in them right there. You just kind of make it happen and look for wires hanging out of them and look for this and that. And it's just, how it is, man.
That's one of those. That's one of those things where you have to kind of really take in your environment and notice little subtle changes. Like, was that hole there yesterday? Was that piece of asphalt new looking yesterday? Or
that's
is that
filled? Why'd they fill that in? Did they fill that in last night? That's something. So it's.
I know at one point in Iraq, IEDs and stuff. One way they were trying to counter it, and they were going. I guess they were going and fixing IED holes, like the engineering companies. And then they would go through and spray paint on top of them, like a symbol or something like that, to show that this was the Americans fixed the IED hole or a pothole here. This isn't an IED that's been in place. Yeah. So, what was like the enemy composition? What were you seeing? Like, what were you guys getting attacked with? And
small,
kind of
IEDs, mostly IEDs. At least my first part there, and when I was in the western part of Ramadi, it was all IEDs, some small arms fire, some indirect fire, mostly IEDs. But then later on, the second half of the deployment, we switched. So half of us in first or second brigade went to East Ramadi, and those in East Ramadi went to West Ramadi. East Ramadi was Camp Corregidor, and then West Ramadi was before they put in all the cops, the combat outpost was Camp Ramadi.
So you guys just rotated units, like your teams just rotated units?
Rotated because the teams in East Ramadi, it was even more deadly, there's more fighting going on. So Major Grice or Lieutenant Colonel Grice, he wanted to switch them out, kind of give some reprieve. People didn't really want to because you start getting used to working with those units. But
yeah,
we had one of the teams in my assault. He got wounded, IED, burn up the whole Humvee, burn up the 240, burn up. He got wounded, and it was dangerous, and even more so than West Ramadi, which was dangerous as hell too. It was just more. East Ramadi at the time was more direct fire fights, more attacks, more prolonged attacks. So at least that's how I saw it.
Yeah, I can see that. How if you're the teams on the ground, you don't want to switch because you're building these relationships.
Yeah,
you're getting to know your neighborhoods. AO. Yeah, you're getting to know all these things. Like you have like a rhythm with the people you're supporting. So now you don't have to ask questions. You already know what they're going to do, and then switching out. But also at the same time, if you're in a really shitty spot, you're probably still not going to ask to switch with someone else. Like
what are you going to do? You're going to complain to your platoon commander or your company commander and say, "Look, I want out of here. It's too dangerous." And you can't.
I'm sure even those guys were like didn't want to move. I mean, maybe they did, but
they didn't either. They didn't want to move.
Yeah.
So that was it. Mostly, it just depends where you're at. But East Ramadi, when I went there in January through March. The end of December through the end of March, that was way more dangerous. And it was a lot of attacks all the time, direct fire, IEDs, RPGs, indirect fire, all of it. We were working with the first of the 506 Airborne Unit, infamous or famous for the whole Band of Brothers, and they were working out of Camp Corregidor. They had an area control there in southeast Ramadi, and that's who we worked with mostly. For that second half.
Yeah.
And they were an outstanding unit, though.
What kind of IEDs were you seeing? Were they like single IEDs? Did you see a lot of daisy chains? Were they heavy IEDs?
Some were heavy, some weren't. But most were, former mortars or 155 rounds that during the fall, they abandoned, and then everybody went and got the free ammunition everywhere. And then you were using it for IEDs. So, but there weren't a daisy chain that I remember then. Most of them were, rigged mortar rounds, rigged artillery rounds, and of course there was a lot of dump truck suicide bombers. You've seen those videos in Ramadi.
Yeah.
I mean, just truckloads going through the serpentines and the different combat outposts and blowing up, just filled with explosives. And it was that too, which.
That's
fun.
That's tough, man. That's one of those things. It's like there's nothing you can do about it when there's a dump truck full of explosives coming at you.
Coming at you. Because they're all orange. They're all, for whatever reason, all the dump trucks there were orange. And we're talking that orange dump truck going west on Rock, Michigan. On visual type of thing. You kept your eyes out for those because those always, if they get any close to you, they're going to kill you most likely.
That's crazy, man. That's something a lot of people don't even consider is there's like people living in this town. Like as all this is happening, is there's like gunfights happening. There's mortars going off, IEDs going off, RPGs being shot. There's families like trying to live here and stuff like that, like having to live under this like just craziness. Did you interact with civilians very often?
I didn't, but the units we supported did, especially you go on a presence patrol with them, or you on a mosque Friday patrol to the mosque on Fridays to hand out leaflets or something like that, just to be there with them in case something happens. And I didn't deal with them at all. They did, and they're better men for it because dealing with some of those people, they had to be difficult. Everybody lies to you. Nobody wants to tell you what's going on. You saw that, I'm assuming, in Afghanistan. Nobody wants to tell you anything.
Yeah. People have their own
You don't know
agenda,
what's true. Yeah,
or they're trying
yeah,
to protect
exactly.
themselves too, because they know if they say something, like what's going to happen to them
Yeah.
from the other side.
And you can use that too. We were at a op and we captured somebody and he didn't want to talk, so we dropped him off in front of the mosque on a Friday, real friendly, like handed him, gave him water. I think the platoon commander was shaking his back and shaking his hand like they were buddies.
Like,
The
thanks
guy, the
again,
guy was
man.
just standing there like, exactly right. The guy was just sitting there kind of with his water, like, everybody was just standing around the mosque, pissed off, looking at him.
Yeah,
So,
that's crazy.
yeah,
In Afghanistan, we would see like if something was about to happen, you'd see all the women and kids streaming out of an area. You'd see them
yeah.
gather up their livestock, and we'd see kites go up like signals, and then
Hmm.
you'd see all these women and kids leaving their compounds and going up to 611, which was the main road, and just kind of get out of the area. Ramadi's a city, so I don't know if is that possible. Is that still kind of? Did you still see the same kind of
Yeah,
thing there?
not as you would. You didn't really. I always said that now that they started disappearing, you notice that hey, there's nobody on the streets right now, so you notice that. A lot of times IEDs, you're just driving, they don't even know there's an IED. An IED blows up, and they're right there. They get hit too,
Yeah,
especially in some of the more congested areas in the downtown parts of Ramadi. They get hit too, or some people know about it, some people don't. Um, you know, but a lot of times if you're out, but but you do notice when there's nobody around. Like, where's all the kids? Where'd the kids go?
yeah.
We're the women, and that was you notice that fast.
So you start
But usually
requesting
in
air.
Ramadi, yeah, that's it. Or we're on a patrol, they're already up. Before you go on that op, you already got aircraft overhead, and you got a timeline of when they're gonna be showing up and checking on and checking off. So
Yeah.
but in Western Ramadi, small arms fire exchanges. I was shooting some aluminum worm, but it wasn't until I had to go to a city hit for a month and a half in the late fall of 2005. They needed somebody there, so my team went for 6 weeks, and then I came back in end of December to Eastern Ramadi when I
Hmm.
came back. And hit was a crazy place too. I had my first drops there. Had numerous controls and fights. And the hit was a small little town about 40 minutes from Al Assad, and it's right there on the Euphrates. And it
Hmm.
was a little, crap hole, dangerous town that Marines had. It never one unit had never controlled it. A unit might be there for a month or 6 weeks, but it wasn't one of the ones that took a year. A unit's not going to be there a year or 7 months in the Marines case. It
Yeah.
was these odd. I mean, you might come in for a while. Army units come in, but Hit was a crazy town too, and dangerous.
Can you tell us about the first drop you got there?
Yeah, we had. I got to Hit at I think it was like around uh, end of October 2005, and we got in some. I got a control in the talk with aircraft with an observer out there right when I got there. I
Hmm.
show up, they get hit, and I'm talking to aircraft, and they're marking it. So we had a rough Type 2. Um, they were across the river, so I had some pretty good deconfliction. Look, anything across that river in this area is considered shooting back is not. You don't have friendlies. There's no soldiers. There's no Marines over there in that area. So I had a deconfliction point, and then I had an observer on the ground that I was talking to for marking the target. And then once the Cobras started getting shot at, then they just kind of took over since there's not any. They didn't get a Type 3, but I gave them, a Type 2 with different controls, and they were just kind of circling shooting. And
Yeah.
and that was it. And I don't really call that my control because I really wasn't there. I just was kind of coordinating with the observer. And technically, it was my control. I signed up those orders when they left the rail when I said clear hot, but it really wasn't my control. But about 2 weeks later, we I got a call. Hey, Captain Angel, we're on camp hit or fob hit, which is outside the city. Hey, you need to go down to the river at this area. We got a IA or Iraqi Army soldier just got shot, and they're under attack. So the Army's down there looking at some stuff. Go down there. So just me and my thick vehicle and my team had getting escorted by 2 Abrams. I mean, down to the city, and then they dropped us off, and there's really nobody around. I had to go up to this. We dropped the gear, or get out of the Humvee, drop our gear, run up to the top of this building, about a 5-story building. Everything over there has those walls, right? You
Hmm.
don't have the slanted roof. It's all the wall, the courtyard on the top, about 3 feet high, right there on the edge of Euphrates River in this bridge. And we get up there, there's still blood all over from this guy that killed. They took him down, but the Iraqi soldiers were just behind his berm, just internally focused. They weren't fighting, they weren't looking, they just, doing what snipers do. Keep your head, morale, keep your head down. And so nobody wanted to do anything. And I was like, well, so we had to get going. So first thing I did is I just need to peek over this wall and take a look. And the second I peeked over that, a round cracked right over my head.
Oh my God.
And of course,
dude.
I know. I even felt it, and not the bullet, but you just feel that disturbance in the air. At least that's what I thought. It was just crack right there, and I was just, and that instant they did that. My team, without even saying anything, my saw gunner stood up, started laying waste in that direction, and my team chief, and they started shooting 203s because my team chief and my comms chief both had 203 M4s, and then my 0861 scout observer, he had those parasols, the short stocked saws. Man, he worked that thing like a beast, and we started getting them exchanging some fire, and then once we started doing that, the Iraqis jump up and they started spraying and praying with their AKs, and then we started getting a little bit of control back, started getting more fire from the aircraft on stations, and kind of looking around, see what's up, and across the river we see a couple of men with some AKs and man jammies in the man dresses going in and out of this little hut right on the river, and we saw them with the AKs. I had aircraft on station. I had a F-18, and I got them right there on that with an LMAV and blew up that little pump house with these guys, and that was my first real control that like to go. But then we had more that same day. We had where that sniper was shooting at us from. I had a section of Cobras come in and shoot it into the window. And the first guy, the lead, he was right on target. Of course, Dash 2 comes in, and he's all over the place. But they're so close, I can't even tell him to abort.
Yeah.
Because you can't hear it. And that's just how close we were, right on top of the roof. They're coming right down the road next to us on their attack heading. I get it. And he finally gets back on target. But when Dash 2 was shooting, he was way off initially, right? But there's civilians around, so I boarded him, but he couldn't even hear. He got on target, and then we didn't hear much more from that inside from that house anymore. But it was a different animal too, because it was so small. And I dropped a 500-pound bomb on a house across the river because they were shooting mortars at us from that area, and the Sky Eye, the Scan Eagle. I don't know if they called them that back then. When you went to Scan Eagles, saw supposedly a mortar tube on the roof. They brought me down there. I cleared hot on a 500-pound bomb. But first I shot with LMAV and then a 500-pounder because I told that the battalion commander, I was like, you probably need to get approval from division. Okay. They come back. They said we didn't need any approval. Of course, so totally different. This little crap hole town hit. Nobody's heard of from Ramadi, where they didn't want to drop a bomb. It wasn't about dropping bombs to your civilians. It was about we don't want
Got to win the PR campaign too, man.
Exactly. It's a multifaceted war, right?
Yeah, for sure. So, can you talk about like the adrenaline rush that you're getting? During even your first control in the COC. I mean, there's adrenaline there because it's for real. You're doing a real call for fire or whatever it is. You're doing real targets, real aircraft. What was going through your mind? Like, oh shit, or was anything going through your mind?
My main thing was like, I didn't want to kill some American on accident, or have the aircraft give a cleared hot when the aircraft maybe didn't see the mark, even though he said the guy on the ground said we're marking with 50 cal tracer. I had a pretty good deconfliction point. Look, I don't want to kill anybody who shouldn't be killed, and that's what's going through your head. I don't want to hurt anybody down there, and when you get them a cleared hot, you want to do it safe and right. But that's kind of what I was thinking at that point. That's because it wasn't standard. You're not set on OP Alpha, giving you a call for your little sheet here. It's COC is pretty bland as it is, but everybody's looking at you, and then they're shooting. They got somebody who you don't know, that Marine or that soldier on the ground in this case, who's marking the target. But I probably wouldn't have done it if it hadn't been for the Euphrates, when everybody across the river at that point in that area was considered non-friendly, or at least There were no Americans or Iraqi soldiers. So that's the main thing. I think I was less hesitant because of that, and we just kept their fires over there. And then they started getting shot at, and they got their own approval to shoot back
Yeah,
from across.
self-defense.
Exactly.
For sure.
So,
When you got your first one, in person, where you were out there, on the ground, how were you feeling about that? Same thing. It was just like, all right, I just don't want to fuck this up.
Just pumped. Yeah, you're just pumped. I mean, everything's working. But there's no CAD nonsense. There's no deconfliction by all this other stuff. I had rotary on station, and I had F-18s, and I had some UAV that wouldn't go away. I told the UAV, hey, can you clear the area? We're trying to. No, because it was some pretty high command UAV.
Yeah.
And he's like, I need you to get out of my airspace. I got aircraft. We're not leaving, but we will deconflict. I was like, okay, stay north of the, whatever the northing or easting, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I gave him that deconfliction area, and they were fine with that. But and then when I'm deconflicting, when I'm doing the strike with the F-18, coming in with that LMAV, I have the rotors off in their own area deconflicted, not by time, because I just by space, and that's going to see them. I know they're over there. And I don't want to do the time issue because I'll be honest with you, my time wasn't on the Zulu time by the second.
Yeah, right.
Time on target, this wasn't CAX or whatever, but
yeah.
And that's what it was. It was you got deconflicting, I think, and having a good team. They knew what to do. My comm chief, hey, they're shooting mortars. Who said they could shoot mortars? The units didn't even tell us they're shooting mortars.
Yeah.
He already knows the gun target line. He advises them. I didn't tell him have to go get a gun target line and any of that stuff. He already knew it. It's back to the COC and ASR. I let him know the gun target line, so we can deconflict from that with the 120 mortars, and just having those Marines wanting to fight and wanting to fight smart and then know their job, and that's I couldn't have asked for a better group of men, and that's what just surprised me there. It was seamless. I didn't have to worry about anything. I'm directly here. My team, they got security. They're shooting back. Hey, we got U.S. Army's coming out of this building here. Yell down to them. They're just initiative. And that's you can't buy that.
No, for sure. The brilliance and the basics too.
Running
those
exactly
stupid
right.
drills over and over again that feel like, why am I doing this?
Exactly, they help.
And even if you don't use that basic whatever drill it is in combat, you're probably going to use some kind of form of it. So you've done the basic thing so many times, it'll be easy to kind of pivot into something to be more flexible on target,
Exactly.
Did you guys run into a lot of did you have issues with urban canyons and stuff and being able to actually have eyes on a target, or, because you're the JTAC. So I don't know. Go ahead.
Ramadi there was, because it was even more of the urban canyon. There's a lot of, but I say having those pilots above too, that knew the area you've been talking to night after night, day after day. They know your call sign. They know who you are, because sometimes those on the SIPR they'll email you the video.
Yeah.
So we're talking to those pilots are there. They know the area, and I think that helps. But then again, in the deeper part of the cities, we used I called some rotary ring cannon fire in, and that was odd because we're so close to it. They start ricocheting, and they ricochet over you, even if your deconfliction's good, and it's loud. It's just a different sound, and you're then you're even more nervous. You're we had that once. Somebody kept popping behind a corner shooting RPGs at us in a tank that was below us in a house or next to a house. We had rotary ring just suppress this corner because the door right there at that corner, and that wasn't my sixth line, but basically that's what you're doing. I need to suppress these guys, won't move.
Yeah.
We put a tank main gun through that building, nothing. And so that's what they'll do. They'll come in, you got to try what works and what doesn't. I mean, and then you start to realize, okay, that was way too close for cannon fire from a rotary wing. Maybe, so you kind of find out what works and what doesn't. And luckily nobody got hurt.
Did the guys you were attached with have any kind of fire support guys with them, like forward observers or JFOs and stuff that you guys kind of teamed up with, or were they none at all?
No, they did. They had the Army has they don't have their officers aren't like FOs. They're called fire support officers at the company level. So instead of a fifth team leader, that's a senior first lieutenant in a Marine infantry company. That's the fifth team leader. Here they have an actual artillery officer that is the fire support officer, and he does it all, or he tries to. or he might get a, ETAC from the Air Force to help him out. But that's who there are. But over there wasn't that many fires, so those FSOs were doing information ops. So they were planning on handing out basketballs and or soccer balls and candy, all that nonsense. That's what they kind of headed out doing, with the secondary being fires. So we were with them, and they liked it. But we teamed up with them on patrol. But okay, I'm working fires with you. You stay near us for this part of the movement, But then we started doing those smaller ops with it was just an ANGLICO team, an Army Scout team, and then an Army Sniper team. And I didn't start that program. It was done by one of our air officers, and they came up with that battalion task force called Task Force Dark Eagle. And that was run by the first of the 506 Airborne, which was on Eastern Ramadi. And they started that before I showed up. Basically, small kill teams. We started going into houses, just 12 men, strapped with AT4s, laws. We had AT4s and laws. We had, a lot of ammo, a lot of grenades. Going into a building that had pretty good supporting area, and then we'd make ourselves. The Army would blow holes in the roof, called loopholes, and make ourselves known. By the morning, sun comes up, jihadists come out looking for you, and if they know you're in the area, but they're not sure where. We started doing that, and we started getting a lot of enemy contact, neutralizing a lot of bad guys, and it got real successful for a while until you don't change your ops and then somebody gets killed. But we started doing that, and that became we started getting a lot of air to ground fires, a lot of that doing those teams because they were coming out of the woodwork, but they were so close. You're using your own weapons shooting if you don't have air on station, or if they're too close, because some of my guys they had to throw grenades over walls because guys were shooting them from the next wall. They were down the street fires. The snipers were just taking out these spiders left and right. The scouts were good at the security and protecting if there was a family in there, and doing local security, and then we were up there on the roof calling in air, and that's when some of those officers, when we started dropping 120s around the soccer stadium in Ramadi, and LMAV missiles and gun runs from those, and it's just, and that started getting a little bigger. Then we'd have one team like that, a Dark Eagle team, then they get 3 out there with supporting positions, mutually supporting positions, and some would make themselves known, and the insurgents would kind of converge on them, but then we'd be behind them, engaging them that way, and then calling in air or whatever would get approved. There was some of those. 3-7, 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines was in the AO just to our west, and they would call the COC over there with the Army, like, what are y'all doing? They literally have people running into our AO from yours. What's going on? What operations do you have? I mean, because those insurgents, as you know, driving a Humvee, you're reacting to them. We started doing these missions. The Army developed, and then the ANGLICO air officer Garrick Rohr developed these, and they started coming out, and then they were making mistakes that we might normally make on a street. Where are they at? We don't know exactly where they're at, but they're over here. They were doing that, and then we're getting a lot of action from that.
That's crazy, man. You were saying, you said that you do that until you don't change up your SOPs or whatever, and someone gets killed. Is that what happened?
Yeah. Well, after we had rotated back to the States, one of the sniper teams, we got real close. We worked with them all the time. The team leader was a former Marine as well. They had did this off in the middle of the night, and they were exfilling, and the insurgents knew kind of what the TTPs were, the tactical techniques procedures were, and they waited for them to exfil out, engaged them beforehand, and that's when they killed like 3 guys, 3 soldiers, and wounded several other, and so that's what happens, you get something. It was a good op, and then the enemy learns. The enemy learns from you. It's a constant.
Yeah, it's a shifting thing.
Chess game. It's a chess game, and so
for sure.
He emailed me. I got home. He's just like, yeah, man, not good. Sergeant Silva died. Sergeant Jones got killed. And so
that's tough, man.
But
yeah.
But those ops were great. I mean, because we had to have a lot of ammunition. So we were we were taking out laws. We learned to shoot the old Vietnam Law rockets.
Mm-hmm.
We were bringing AT-4s. It was way different. And I don't even know when we were sending back our after action reports what the company level were saying about this type of nonsense.
They're probably like, what are they
what are you
doing over
doing?
there?
It's like, yeah, it's so. But it was interesting. It was no special forces type stuff. It was just soldiers and Marines coming together.
Thinking
Let's
outside
figure
the
this out.
box.
Let's. I'm tired of being the ones reacting. Let's make them react. How do we do that?
Yeah.
Well, take over a house. They'll come right to you, but they're not 100% sure. So.
Did it feel like Ramadi changed it all from the time you got there to the time you left?
No, but when I came back my third deployment and I visited Ramadi, it changed. It seemed to change.
Yeah.
It didn't seem for at least the intel we got, it didn't seem as dangerous. I'm sure it was in '07 when I came back for my third time. But it wasn't what it was in '05 and '06. So at least for us.
That in between time, when you come back, you were still with Anglico when you came back, correct?
Mm-hmm.
When you guys came back and it was like, all right, now we're going to work up for our next deployment. How far off was the next deployment? How did your personnel changes occur? Like obviously people EAS or PCS, leave or get out. How did that happen? And then did your training change at all because of what you experienced on your first deployment?
Yeah. Well, I left for my second deployment to Ramadi. The first time in Ramadi was from August of '05 to March of '06. And then we left again in August of '06 until March of '07. And we were back and forth with 2nd Anglico and some of their 5th Anglico, and then 3rd Anglico reserves were in there mixed in with us as well.
Yeah.
But that's who mostly though it was 1st and 2nd switching off.
And what kind of like in between like that when you were home, what were you doing to prepare for your next Ramadi deployment or your next deployment to Iraq?
Well, a lot of that, some of this stuff, like the importance of obviously thinking outside the box. Look, you better learn how to do a quick 6-line with aircraft with the rotors. So we go to Maltown. We started getting into Maltown there on Camp Pendleton and doing aircraft overhead. We had the air officers overhead, pretend like they're aircraft. We instead of having the ISLID because the laser stuff at night, we'd have a regular pointer. Is it mark your target? What's your sign? What is it you're getting shot at? You're just putting that stress on these teams to have them kind of come up with their own.
Yeah.
So you need to figure this out fast. And then we throw in stuff about how the company commander doesn't want that. He wants you to stay right here. So what do you do now? So we try to implement that kind of friction that combat gave to you, pushed into, especially urban areas like Ramadi or Fallujah. Mm-hmm. And then we started training them how to do some of the if you're just waiting inside of buildings, how do you do that? You put your face right next to a window? No, you're gonna get shot. You stay back in the shadows. You can put mosquito netting over a window to kind of take that, reduce the shine inside the room to keep it dark. There's all kinds of things you don't really learn from the schoolhouse, but you learn from actual doing these missions. And that's where you're training a lot of these guys. And of course, you get stuff. That's stupid. We're never going to do that. Your weapons, your the radio's your weapon type of not. And like, yeah, it is to an extent, but don't be. The Army doesn't have to babysit you. Yeah, exactly. The Army doesn't want to have to babysit you because you only bring one magazine, because you don't want to carry it.
You're not a prima donna.
You got to be an asset. And the same thing when we first got to Ramadi. A lot of they don't even have guns. Some of those second go teams didn't even have gun trucks. They had those little four-door armored or Sudai armored trucks. And then I know we really pushed to get the gun trucks because they're going to have to protect us. We're not really helping them then. We're not being an asset if they have to take assets away to protect us. No, we're Marines. We need to protect ourselves. We need gun trucks. We need 240s up there or 50 cals. Mm-hmm. We can run them, and that's what we were able to do. And that, as you know, you want to be an asset to these units, not a
for
you're not
sure.
going to babysit some. You get babysat, and that's not what you want. So.
Yeah, there's no time for liabilities when you're out there doing that kind of work.
Yeah, some of those pilots, not all of them, because I knew some great pilots, but some of them would come out from the wing to do the factor, and they would be, "That's dumb. I'm not carrying that much ammo." Like, man, you don't know. You're right. You probably won't. Let's hope you don't get in a fight, but you don't, you want
Yeah.
one ammo, it's just ridiculous.
There's a
So.
reason a lot of this stuff is done. You can call out
Hmm.
bullshit all day, but for like patrol SOPs and stuff like that.
Hmm.
There's usually a pretty good reason why you're doing whatever it is you're doing.
Yep. Mistakes were
Because
made, and I had to learn that. Yep.
yeah, 100%. How did you see? How did you see like medical training change from the first time you deployed during the invasion to like your third time? Because I imagine what people were seeing downrange, experiences people were having, medical situations people were put into. It had to. I mean, I know it did, but I don't know how much it changed from that time frame for you guys. Because now we do live tissue training.
Oh, yeah.
CLS is huge, tourniquets are huge, and stuff like that. That
Same
obviously
thing.
wasn't the case during the invasion, right?
No, no, we had, you had a little more training, but then an infantry battalion has, I think by TO actually has instead of just one surgeon, they can actually have three in their TO. I could be wrong in this, but like 1-5 had, before we deployed, they had like three surgeons, doctors that deployed with us. Not docs. These are actual doctors,
Mm-hmm.
surgeons, and the Navy that came with us. And so some of that stuff we didn't have to learn, but then obviously that changes. We're going back. They might have had their surgeons, but here you had to be more. You're providing the tourniquet. This is how you use it. The blood, the quick clot, all the different bandages, all that stuff. We trained and trained on a lot of it. And some team members in the different brigades had been through some civilian courses that Anglico put them through.
Yeah.
EMT stuff like that was cool as hell, man. I was like, that really, because you don't see that at the infantry battalion. You definitely don't see that stuff
No.
at an artillery battalion.
No.
And so I just thought it was that outside the box thinking that these units were doing. You had to. You didn't have a choice. You got to make it happen. And it
So,
was a lot of different training.
the training got a lot better than it was before your like time doing the invasion, is what you're
Oh
saying.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I was at Anglico, I know
for medical.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying medical training. Was I think wasn't as good as it should have been during the invasion.
Yeah.
But other training was fine, but the medical training, it wasn't what it should have been, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, now we're continuing to make advancements. Now they're doing live transfusions on the battlefield. They have that capability now, which is something people talked about. Like, is that a possibility back in the day? But no one, I don't think anyone ever tried it until recently. So now that's becoming a thing. But Anglico is great about opening up opportunities for doing outside the box training. TCCC is pretty standard for everyone that goes through there. The Tactical Casualty Combat Care, I think is what it stands for. Live tissue training was something every team did before we went on deployment. And then there was a exercise, I don't remember what it's called now, JTM, Joint Tactical Medicine, out by Nellis, where we would send like a SALT. And so you're talking, less than 20 guys, but they would take 25,000 rounds of ammo with them. And for a week, they would just do care under fire, and they would be sitting there doing different shooting from different positions and all this different stuff. And then part of the scenario is so-and-so is hit, these are his wounds. So how do you treat them? And it's this like really advanced like medical training that's
Saving lives,
Yeah, it's saving lives 100%. Something you couldn't have asked for back in the 04.
Get them on an aircraft as soon as you can, but you gotta was it start the bleeding, stop the bleeding, protect the wound, treat the shock. That's it. Basics,
that's the ditty,
man.
bro.
You got to do it, and that's it.
Yeah.
But
now, like, because of all this stuff in Iraq and IEDs and stuff like that, we've really kind of changed the mindset of people on tourniquets and the ability to use tourniquets. I keep a tourniquet in my car now, even now, because I know that I can put it on someone and they'll be okay if they require it, obviously. Before it was, I remember even when I was a kid, I was in Boy Scouts and they said something about if you put a tourniquet on someone, they'll probably lose that limb. So never do it unless you have to. And now that's not the case anymore, which is
when
cool.
I was enlisted, that was that's what it was too. Look, they're probably gonna lose the arm. Only doing an emergency, and they got to put T and the date on their forehead in blood or however you do it. But it wasn't. Now it's like throw a tourniquet on it, and a lot different.
Yeah, for sure.
And even the whole like tampon and the bullet wound stuff, that was in talk about for a while, and now it's like, you don't do that, So stuff's changing.
They really preach against that now. There's a lot of.
I know now.
Yeah, there's a couple corpsman Instagram pages I follow, and one of them has been going pretty hard about like, don't be like, quit using. This is something we really need to get out of people's minds. Quit using tampons. There's something about it that messes up the kind of like how we used to use, like you said before, Quick Clot, which now they're like, shit, don't use that. Like that messes all kinds of stuff up. Like when you dump this burning chemical onto the wound,
it chemically burns the shut. Yeah.
It's supposed to solder it or whatever you call it, closed. A solder. What am I saying? But you know what I'm saying. But anyways,
same point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Man.
It's so changes. Remember, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so for the second time to Ramadi, so your third deployment, did you guys know who you were going to support this time? Was it the same kind of units? Was it the same areas? Or were you guys going to a completely different area?
No, I was supposed to, and then I think a couple months before we were supposed to deploy, I found I got chosen to do. My team was going to go with the MEF PSD, the MEF Personal Security Detail. I was going to be the OIC, and then my team was with me, and then they already had roughly three teams or three platoons of PSD Marines that were going to arrive in country, or they were already in country, and I was going to switch out with them from an officer from 2nd ANGLICO.
Do you want to explain what PSD is for those that may not know?
Yeah, PSD, I'm sorry, Personal Security Detail for basically like VIPs in country. And so we did security for then Brigadier General Neller. He was one of the under commanders, assistant MEF commanders, but he was Brigadier General then, and there was another general officer, and then there was General Zilmer, who was the MEF CG. And then when General Mattis came into the country, we protected him, and then we also protected the governor of Al-Anbar province, some big overweight Tony Soprano-looking Arab guy who ruled over Ramadi with corruption and an iron fist. But so those are who we secure. And if we had people come in country, they had to go to Baghdad from like State Department. Sometimes we had to, we would. So that's what it was. So I didn't want to do it, but I got picked to do it, and I did it. But I didn't want to do it. I wanted to do ANGLICO stuff.
Yeah.
And so I did that for 4 months because 1 MEF and 2 MEF rotated out, and then I went to. I visited Ramadi when I had to go take the generals there, like General Mattis and all them, to Ramadi, which is an interesting point there. I can get into that, but and it was different. It was still a dangerous city, but it was just different. There was small combat outposts everywhere.
Yeah.
It was a different fight, So.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you wanted to do a PSD detachment like deployment, because I can't imagine, because that's a completely different. That's dog and pony show stuff,
It is, and then it can be dangerous too. But
for sure,
those general officers will make some. You had to stop at a roadside market on the road between Ramadi and Fallujah because the general wanted to get a watermelon. I'm like, I heard that over the net. Hey, his call sign wants to stop and get a watermelon and talk to the people around here. I was like, can we just wait to get down the road? And no. So we had to pull over. Then you have to get out there. You're not taking knees. You're really kind of, being the visible security for these VIPs.
Yeah.
And then right when we show up, bam, people, garage doors are getting closed. People are leaving, and so.
Oh really?
We got his little watermelon. Yeah, that's how it started. And then 5 minutes later down the road, they knew we were there, got IED'd and RPG shot us because they want to get a watermelon. But I understand. You want to get out there, talk to the people.
Yeah.
Above my pay grade, but when you're in charge of his security, you're like, this is not something we need to be doing.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of stress that I didn't want to deal with.
You guys had 2 different priorities for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then you had to deal with the strap hangers. There's all these colonels and majors and sergeant majors that want to go with them. If there's not enough room, they get mad. Why there's not enough room? Why can't you kick these Marines out? Because these are my Marines. Their job is to do this. You don't know our TTPs. You don't know how to change a tire. You don't know where the different med kit is. These are my shooters. I can if I have to. The general says I will, but I'm not going to just kick out my Marines so you can tag along to the green zone in Baghdad. I'm not.
Gee, yeah, it's not a field trip, man.
No, man, that happened all the time. But then you get the guys like, hey, I just want to go out once. We go all right. We never get out of the base. And so I talked to my team. I was like, hey, Anon, if we have some time, he wants to ride with us. So sometimes you let those guys go along. There's some poor major who hadn't flew in there once and hadn't left in 9 months. He wants to
Yeah.
get outside, see something,
Like see the
and
country while
I
he's there.
see what it looks like outside of the can and the coffee bean.
Yeah.
No.
The green bean. Oh
Yeah, I
man.
do. But for Ramadi though, for this one at least, I think when we went to Eastern Ramadi, that was one of the first missions I did there. It was a company op with one of the Army companies.
Hmm.
We're going to go. It was a company op. We're going to get there. We're going to insert the back door Camp Corregidor. And Camp Corregidor is, John, do you know where that's at in
No,
Ramadi?
no.
Okay, well, it was in Eastern Ramadi, just south of Route Michigan, at the outskirts of the city. So one side's built up, the next side to it's rural. And Camp Kruger itself was the old agricultural college
Hmm.
that the Army, that the Americans took over. And so we're going to leave there in the morning, do a coordinate search for IEDs, based really simple stuff we've done before. So my air officer had a couple sections of rotary wings showing up throughout the day. No problem. Easy walk. It's a short walk. It wasn't a big patrol. We weren't in the city. We were just going around it and to the southern part, kind of by the old train station to the south. And just leave at 07 in the morning. We get there, set up the cordon, and before long, occasionally shots start ringing out. Nothing, no, just harassing shots. Nothing too
Hmm.
big. So we couldn't find him. I'm definitely not going to use air on that yet because air's not on station. I'm not going to call necessarily an active tick for that. We want to use that in case something bigger comes on. So my team chief said, "Let's get here, sir." And we get down. There's a big mound by this building, by this kind of farmhouse, and we look around. This is the only mound anywhere, and the trash and the dirt and sand. He's like, "This isn't good. Let's move." So we moved 15, 20 feet. Right when we did that, some soldier took over where we're at, and the mound blew up.
Oh my God.
And but it was an IED that was buried so deep it just shot straight up. So he blew up, and we watched him flipped in the air, and he came down. He wasn't hurt, like wounded, like with shrapnel, but he got flipped in the air, man. He had dirt in his ear. He was yelling because he couldn't hear when IED was off. And last time, and we were just like, man, this Ramadi. Then we started getting machine gun fire from that same sniper position. Rotary rings show up, do a couple gun runs, dispatch them, or they left, or we killed them. We didn't go after and look.
Yeah.
But as a JTAC, that was a good area because we're on one side of the cordon, and taking fires from the other area. And I told that episode, like, me and my team want to go over there. We want to be the closest. We want to be the closest friendly troops because I don't want to give that off. And it's one of the things I always wanted to do is be the closest, so I didn't have to worry about,
What's in front of you?
some
Yeah.
squad leader who wasn't 100% sure where his fire team was at.
Hmm.
And so we were there, and we get those gun runs in. But that was always something we tried to get and instill in the companies we supported. Like, we need to be there on the ground with them, not sitting in the top. That's for the air officers. But
Yeah.
and so we wrapped that up. They found some IDs, blew it. On our way back, our route takes us right there between Ramadi and that Camp Corregidor is a canal. It runs basically northwest to southeast. And it's not very wide, 10, 12 feet maybe. And, it's covered by reeds, big, but on the other side of the reeds, there's buildings. We get there, some of us are already going in the camp, the back door of the camp, and before you know it, just all hell breaks loose. There is so much fire going around. Everybody drops to the ground because all the incoming fire. And they weren't that accurate because they're shooting through the reeds,
Hmm.
but they knew exactly where we were. They were close enough to know they're right there. So just a lot of fire coming in, and I had aircraft on station, and I remember shooting through the reeds thinking, what am I doing? I can't get any flatter, so I go on my back, I get my radio, my imbiter with my earpiece and whatnot, and start talking to the aircraft. And the whole time they're shooting, I see stuff coming up next to us, dust. My team chief says my comms chief is wounded and shot in the arm. And then I said, take care of it. I got air. I got to bring him in. FSO says, you're approved. I started bringing gun runs along the reeds, and there were cannons. There were 2.75 rockets were shooting up along those reeds, and then finally we started slacking it off. But just how brazen these spiders in Ramadi would be on some of these attacks. But you got to be prepared as a JTAC to get in there close because that's the type of stuff that happens. like earlier we talked about your job is a radio. It is. You have to be able to shoot. But then at that moment, I remember shooting like, what am I doing? I need to be on my radio. It was just split seconds. So
Yeah.
I roll over my radio and start calling it in. And once I get approved, I'm just laying on my back looking over because you can't get any lower, right? I want to be on my back. And I'm talking to the FSO, laying next to each other, and that firing's going on. And my team chief, he got shot in the arm, but it just went up his arm. It was a huge tear. It went into his blouse, rode along into the skin, and then came out his shoulder.
Oh, that's crazy.
But just it's just the right place at the right time. Just 1 millisecond here probably could have caught and starts tumbling in his body or something. But that's it. And he was strapped up. But man, that was crazy. Those unlucky or lucky you can be.
Yeah.
With such a superficial wound, but it could have been 100% worse.
Yeah. Did you guys have on the ground? Did you have any kind of rover capability, like being able to see what the aircraft could see from their pod?
We did. I just didn't, and I didn't take my computer with me a lot of times because we're in Ramadi. We were trying to request rotary wing mostly because we could use rotary wing. When F-18s or Harriers showed up, you could kind of use them, but their gun runs aren't as accurate as rotary wings for the most part. At least in my view, I didn't think they were. Nothing against those guys. I just thought that the rotary wing being closer to the ground,
they're on the target.
Yeah, they're on it, and so we tried to request rotary wing as much as we could. Of course, you didn't always get what you wanted, and we loved having F-18s and Harriers overhead, but I wasn't. I knew guys did it in the talk, but I just didn't bring it out with me. I didn't want to get transfixed on that computer, to be honest with you.
Did you at the time? Was it only like the laptop, like the Tough Book version of it, or did you have the little eyepiece that you could carry around like a radio?
No. In fact, that's the first time I ever heard there was an eyepiece for it like that. That's
yeah. So there was one I used in Afghanistan. It was called the Soldier ISR, and it was about the same size as a 152 radio. Right. Okay. And you just slip it in, and I would slip it into one of my magazine pouches. And then it had a little eyepiece that you could either clip onto your eye protection, so that you, like, while you're walking around, like, that is beaming into your eye. You could see exactly what the pilot's seeing. I kept mine because it was always fucking around. I kept mine in my dump pouch. And then whenever I would be talking to an aircraft and I wanted to see something, I would just reach in and grab it out and look real quick and then put it back.
That's cool.
Yeah, I didn't.
The smallest ones we had were called these little clamshells. It was like a little DVD player you kind of open up, But I just didn't carry that stuff with me for these ops. I just thought if it was going to do that, the air officer in the talk, was going to do those as much as they could. So.
Well, outside of that one, outside of that, I don't think I would have carried anything else either. A laptop or even like a little DVD pop up.
I knew teams that did. I knew teams that brought that stuff with them, and good on them, man. But I was like, I mean,
it's, if you think you're going to use it, everybody's got their own preferences. I knew guys in Afghanistan. I knew JTACs in Afghanistan that went out with nothing except for their 152. They didn't take an ISLID. They didn't take. They're dude.
I love the ISLID, man.
Oh yeah, the ISLID's great. I always had ISLID on me, day or night. Just in case, because you never know if
it's light.
Yeah, the little lightsaber.
You can use it for anything.
Nobody else knows what they are. I remember one time. I remember when I got to Afghanistan. We had to get some of this stuff from the unit when we did a turnover, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't have ISLIDs." I was talking. I think it was 7th Marines. They're like, "We don't have any ISLIDs." Damn. We're sorry. Blah blah blah. And like a week or two later, and I'm sitting here like, dude, I was told you guys had some. How can you not have any of this stuff that I'm supposed to have?
I know.
And then I go in and one of the armory guys is like, "What is this?" And he pulls out an ISLID. I'm like, oh, God. They don't even, because they didn't know what they were. I'm like, if you don't don't tell me you don't have it if you don't even know what it is. You have 3 of them. And you have the mini ISLID.
Because you can use the ISLID for roping or any just coordination from ground to ground, all that stuff. So I've seen a lot of ground units use it for that stuff. Not pointing at them, but hey, rope the sky. This is where we're at. Roping the sky. This is where we're at, and not the aircraft, but.
Yeah. And for those that don't know what we're talking about, the ISLID is a handheld. It looks like a lightsaber handle, but it shoots a infrared laser out that we can use to mark targets and stuff for the aircraft that you can only see with NVGs and stuff like that. Yeah. The only time I've ever seen anyone rope an aircraft is when I was working with the Air Force, and they're all about it. They will.
Are they?
They will
Yeah,
rope. I'm not going to talk about their TTPs. I'll just leave it at that. But I've never seen anyone rope it, and they did. They would rope aircraft, and they used it extremely effectively. I was like, wow. And talking about when using ISLID, like doing no comm close air support, and using an ISLID only as symbols. And I was working with a AC-130, and we were having, from the time I'd roped the aircraft to targets, rounds on target under a minute. You know, it was just like boom, boom, approved, good, and just shooting. You're like, damn, that was quick. That's cool. The ISLID's a cool tool. But there's too many idiots out there that don't know what they're doing, though.
Burn your eye out with it or something.
Yeah,
but I mean, bad thing I had about the airports over there is we were on some ground patrol in Ramadi once, and we asked them. I think they showed up at like, I don't know, they were 18,000 feet, maybe a little bit higher. I think maybe a little bit higher, and they couldn't see some things even with their pods, and we asked if they could come down. It was like, can you try to come down to maybe 15,000 or Angell's 15, right? Yeah. We like to talk like that, but he's like, certainly not. Well, why not? Well, I'm not going to put my aircraft at risk. And what? I'm sitting here on the corner in Ramadi, Iraq, in 2006, and you don't want to put your aircraft at risk going to 15,000 feet,
Yeah.
I mean, the surface to air threat back then for 15,000 feet was almost non-existent,
Yeah. Who's getting shot down back then?
I know. Yeah. And there were some rotary wings that got shot down, but not F-18s,
no,
not F-16s in this case. It's just.
Yeah, occasionally. There's a few videos of them trying to shoot down. I know there's a famous one we would always use in the TACP primer course, and I think they showed it to us in the schoolhouse, where they shot the insurgents shot either like a FedEx or like a DHL cargo plane and shot one of the engines off of it as it took off out of Baghdad. Yeah, well, and the pilots got on them, turned around and landed it, so they survived it and everything. But you see the whole video,
They got four other, They got three other engines, man. They're good.
Yeah, dude. There's some sketchy videos out there of the man pads being shot at some aircraft. There's one, I think it's in Turkey, and they have like a Cobra. I'm pretty sure it's either a Cobra or an Apache. I'm pretty sure it's a Cobra. And it gets shot down by a man pad, and it's so quick from the time they shoot it to the time it gets hit. I was like, man, even if I was to say like, smoke in the air or brake left, brake whatever.
It'd be too late.
By the time I say brake left and he understands what I'm saying, he's going to get hit. Yeah. So, man.
He's already reacting.
What a sketchy gig. But yeah, in 2006 or whatever, there was no real air threats. We definitely had air superiority there.
Oh, yeah. We had, right at the same time, that fall of 2005, a Cobra got shot down north of Ramadi by, I think, a SA-14. Mm-hmm. And got shot down, killed both the pilot and the gunner on that one. But I know this for sure is obviously heard about it at the time, but then Major Grice as a QRF got lifted in there as accused of JTAC on the ground there, calling in some strikes as the whole community was kind of converging to kind of help to remove the bodies and remove the sensitive information from that aircraft. Yeah, but you can look it up. It was October or November of 2005.
Yeah, that's super rare, man. Like that. I mean,
definitely.
So having something like that happen was pretty rare. I mean, it was mostly, I think the biggest threat was rotary wing aircraft taking a RPG shot, someone getting a lucky shot with an RPG and taking you down.
Yeah.
Was it weird? I mean, it had to have been kind of amazing to see how fast the technology to go to war and the equipment and stuff like changed to make, to counter like enemy TTPs and stuff like that. You went from probably... you were in AAVs, you were in tracks during the invasion, but there were people there with soft-sided Humvees and stuff like that.
Humvees.
Where in Iraq it moved into these armored Humvees and stuff where like each door is almost like a bank vault. That door weighs like 500 pounds now to protect the occupant from the IED. Was it kind of crazy to see all these changes in like military equipment, the upgrades and stuff?
It was neat to see some of it. I mean, some of it when we showed up in 2005, they were still rolling around in some of that bolt whatever you can onto these things for some protection. Some of those are still rolling around, but that's when really we're starting to see the actual up armored Humvees show up. Mm-hmm. Thankfully. But yeah, I mean, just all that stuff, just the nature of this equipment changing so fast, built because of the enemy or your abilities, and it was interesting. 'Cause I remember being a grunt and early 90s, you didn't even have a 3-point sling for your weapon. You had the old parade sling, that type of nonsense.
The green
It was all
parade
Vietnam
sling.
era. Is it? You couldn't even move that around. You could shoot out by your platoon sword. So yeah, it was nice seeing some evolution just of the equipment.
One thing that is frustrating though is seeing the military invest in bullshit. You see them buying something, you're like, "What are we doing? Why are we buying this? Nobody wants this." Like nobody. When I was at Anglico, I remember we got some headsets, and the CEO was like, "I don't know, they just bought a bunch of headsets without asking anybody." And JTACs, everybody's trying to get a good headset. And we got these ones that were like an earbud kind of deal, but they just weren't comfortable. They'd pull out of your ear and all this stuff. And nobody liked them. So I think they spent like $1,500 each on these headsets. And after like 2 or 3 months, we were all like, we don't like these. So they were like, all right, we'll just get rid of them then. I'm like, man, all this money just getting just wasted. Like we're just, we'll just send those brand new headsets to Dermo.
They get those bone mics, they go on the back of your head.
Yeah.
Those were weird. We had all kinds of different stuff. They were just try this, try that, try this, try that.
Once I got a Peltor from a guy from 2nd Anglico, I talked to, when I was on my advisor team in 13, I was ripping out with the JTAC that was on the advisor team I was changing out with. He had come from 2nd Anglico, and they gave him a Peltor. And in our 3 days that we, hung around each other, I convinced him he should give me his Peltor and go back to Anglico and tell him that it was lost in combat. I'm like, dude, Anglico has so much money. It's totally fine.
Oh, yeah.
And he gave me his headset, which was super cool, and I wasn't actually expecting.
Those were awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wore that headset for 3 more deployments.
Yeah.
I like that one. That one didn't have the light on the microphone. This was the ComTac 3. What was good with mine was that it was the dual com, which that's you have to be able to do that. Not everyone wants dual com. So I had my team radio in one ear, and then I had either whatever aircraft I was talking to in the other ear, or like back at the control or at the fob in the other ear. So one of those two things. And I love that. Some people don't like having 2 different conversations going on in their ears, and there was a bunch of new headsets that people were buying that were just garbage. But I always really liked that ComTac 3. Were you guys just walking around with cop mics, using the cop mics, or just regular handsets? Like, what were you using mostly?
Oh no, we had the cop mics. We had other ones too. We had some with the cop mic with the earpiece. Then we had, like I said, the bone mics we got, which is just goes on your head, and then they got a boom mic for it, and your Kevlar fits fine on it, or your Mitch helmet, whatever you're using. And we had a lot of different stuff we were trying.
Did you like the bone mics?
I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I felt almost nauseous when I used it, and but I ordered my own set online that had the plug and everything. I think when I was in Iraq, and I forget exactly what it was, but it was a really well enforced 2 earpieces with the boom mic, and that was it. And it fit well with everything, and that was fine.
Yeah.
And I used that the whole time. Well, for my own embiter.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, what kind of radios were you carrying around while you were running around in a Ramadi?
Embiters, team, but we always had the what is it? Not 119, but
117.
Yeah, 117. We had that one. We had the small version. We had the regular version in the vehicles. And each of us had an embiter, and but then we always carried the regular radios. So.
Yeah, the 148, 152, 117.
148. Yeah, the embiter is the 148, right? The 117 had the multi VHF and UHF capabilities.
Yeah, you could do a lot with that. And then you had the 117 Golf, which was a small version. That was like
version, that's right.
Single battery. Yeah. That was the way to go, man. When they got it down to 1 battery, it was like, wow, this is way better. And initially, in regular Marine Corps fashion, when I was with 3.6 and we were in Marja, I was like, hey, let me take that 117 Golf out. Like, it's sitting on the shelf in the comm shop. No one's using it. And the data guys were like, that's for data use only. They wouldn't let me take it out. I'm like, dude, you're making me carry this big-ass radio when you got that one sitting on the shelf collecting dust, like not even being used.
Yeah.
I was like, you guys, fucking Marine Corps, man.
But so my second deployment, my first deployment to Ramadi, in East Ramadi, we were set to leave at the end of March, and we've been doing these Task Force Dark Eagles quite a bit. And I always did most of those, and some of the other teams would do the more conventional, you know, company patrol, vehicle, or something like that. But I was trying to stay with these because I felt almost, not unsafe is a dumb word for it, but I just felt more vulnerable in a truck. Because those
Yeah.
are the ones who were getting all the hits. And so we started doing these, but one of the last two missions we did, I was like, I'm gonna give my team a little relief because we've been doing these all of them are night ops. You leave at 2 in the morning, you get back the next morning at like 6, the next following morning at 6 in the morning. So they were pretty exhausting ops. And so I was like, okay, we're coming around our line, we're doing left seat, right seat. So we had some Air Force ETACs or JTACs come in. They were switching out with us. For whatever reason, at that period, second ANGLICO was going to come where we're at. The Air Force was supposedly going to take it. So we started switching out with them. They started rolling with us. That last op, I had a major with me because he was a JTAC. And he, conventional thing, go out there, searching houses. We got the Iraqi Special Forces guys searching some houses, talking to people. We stop around this one house, probably about 11 in the morning, and they're doing their thing. And we're outside, but I'm getting close to leaving. We're not outside the vehicle at all. So all the vehicles are out, kind of in a 360, orient weapons down, avenues approach, the whole thing. And we also had a reporter with us. I could jump out, take a leak real fast, and jump back in. The reporter's out, just starts walking around. And we told him, you might want to get in these vehicles, man. There's all kinds of snipers around, there's kind of crap going on. He was like, whatever. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, pow, he gets hit in the leg by a sniper.
Oh, shit.
Goes down. He goes down. So an Army medic jumps out of his vehicle, starts working on him. Bam, sniper hits the Army medic. And then and we kind of think we know where we're going from, but there's a vehicle in front of us, but they're not shooting. And just the direction and how they're getting hit, like it's all right there, but they're not shooting. So we just jump around and get in front of that vehicle and start suppressing this kind of palm grove and with a bunch of trees and small houses. And then and it also gives them a little physical break, so they can work on those two wounded, and then they're not in the line of sight. And so, but sure, as soon as we park there, a dump truck comes around, speeding around a corner by about maybe a half a click away, 400 yards at the most, 400 meters at the most, barreling, and he's coming fast. We're waving him off, escalation. My gunner, my team chief is like, so what we're gonna do is like shoot. He freaking puts a good burst in that windshield. The guy, good enough, it was in the middle, so it didn't kill the driver, who it wasn't a IED. He just jumps out and takes off, but it stopped the vehicle because here at this point we're thinking it's a complex attack, which is a TTP in Ramadi at the time, and because they were hauling ass down that corner, around that corner in that dump truck, and they stopped there. Finally, then we get those wounded ready. We leave. That was the last mission we did, except for that night. They asked us, "Hey, do you want to come on one more?" I was like, "Yeah, we'll go. We're doing the right seat." So the Air Force they don't have machine gun. They don't really work it. So my 0861 was behind the 240, and then I was in the back seat as the major and his Air Force driver kind of do their thing, and we're kind of helping them in the whole right seat part. They capture a couple guys on a coordinate search and a raid. As we're driving back slowly, about 2 in the morning, going through some of these side streets, the vehicle in front of us, about the third vehicle in line, just blows up. Hits an IED, it gets blown up on kind of inside, and then comes back down, and it's just smoking. And I'm right behind it. It's dark. You jump out, open up this armored door, and this poor lieutenant back there missing a leg. He's just screaming. So we put a tourniquet on it, and then their medics start coming up and getting out. And you're just sitting. This is typical Ramadi. The whole, you think you're done, and it comes back, man. It'll get you every time. And that's, I think one of the more scared I've been was that time because I was so close to going home. Before I was like, this is it. This is how it is out here. But I was so close to going home, talking to my wife, the whole thing. And but man, that thing really, me and my Marine, John Curran, we went back to we made it back to Camp Corregidor, and both of us smoking a cigarette. I really smoked, but I was just remember being so shaken by that because I'd seen that before, but I think because I was so close to going home, this is the last mission, and that could have been us in front and hit that IED, and now this poor lieutenant's going home without a leg.
Yeah.
And you know, and that city, man, it's just a fucking shithole.
The
So that was our
fabled,
last. That's
the
Go
fabled
ahead.
last mission, man.
That's it,
Okay,
man.
we'll
That's,
do one
you know,
more.
one more. Yeah, we'll help you out, but man, that was it. And then so the next night we leave. We get ready to leave. The Army's taking us down. You can't go down Route Michigan unless it's a combat patrol, unless it's at night. So Route Michigan goes obviously through downtown Ramadi, and so we got all our gear. We're heading out. Army's in the middle of patrol with the Army, heading back towards Camp Ramadi, where they actually fly out of, and helicopters. And sure enough, IED goes off. We weren't quarter mile outside the camp corridor, but it could have been might as well been 100 miles. IED right side, boom, blows up. Put shrapnel in our vehicle, but nobody gets hurt. But our buddy Shane was behind us. His team got hit, so he blew out his door, and he got pretty bad shrapnel wounds. The rest of his team's messed up, but they're all able to kind of function. But the Army patrol keeps going, getting out of the kill zone. But I'm looking with my MBGs in the side mirror. You just see their IR lights, because you got the IR coverage you put on the Humvees. I don't know if y'all did that. And so you just see that, and the vehicle behind it kind of backlighting it, and nobody's getting out. We're trying to call them, nothing. And I contacted the patrollers, like, hey, we're hit. We're getting out of the kill zone. I suggest you do too. I was like, I'm not leaving these guys. Who knows if the city's going to come down on them? And we turned this Humvee around with our little trailer because we were bringing all of our gear with us. Do an 8-point turn as much as you can the whole time. We're thinking we're going to get hit again, but we go back there, we help out them, and head back to Camp Krieger again. And they fly out Shane Murray as a Kazivac. He ended up living, but man, that's it. And finally had to do it again the next night, but nobody got hit that time. It's just that whole city. I remember when I first showed up there, 1-5 was leaving, and I knew some of the Marines and officers in 1-5. And they were just like, this place sucks, man.
Yeah.
They had lost, 13 guys or something, and double that wounded. He's like, this place just sucks. So when they all left Camp Ramadi, they didn't sit up in the back of those 7-ton trucks. They all laid down. They weren't even going to play. You can get armor on those 7 tons, but those guys are like, we're all laying down. Just lay down and make the smallest as they headed off to Al-Assad to fly out and go back to Conus.
That's one of those, like, I'm done, man. Like, I had my fill.
I remember feeling that too. I was like, this down. This place is brutal, man. It'll eat you alive, and it did, man. That place was a kick in the junk for a lot of people.
Yeah, man. That's those last days. You just want to get out of there. You're like, dude, I'm done with this. Like, you're starting to make plans back home. You're reaching out to people. Like, you're starting to like get ready for that life beyond the war zone and stuff like that.
So then you become nervous.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We were wrapping up our deployment in 2013, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna cut early because Ramadan's coming up, and that's gonna be a month, and then we're scheduled to leave like 2 weeks after that. So during this month, we're advisors." During this month, there's no advising happening during Ramadan. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone's just kind of chilling because no one's eating during the day and stuff like that. None of the Afghans are
drinking, right?
No food, no water. When sun up to sundown, and we weren't allowed to eat or drink around them during that time either because try to respect their thing, not try to like rub it in. And so they were like, hey, we're done. We're finishing up. We're packing up, start getting everything ready, start doing accountability of ammo and all this other stuff. And then our major comes in. He's like, hey, we got to go on one more mission. And we're all like, one more mission.
Who's going to that one?
And we went up to PB Cuba for like I don't know, not a Shura, but like a little meet and greet with some of the ANA commanders and ALP, the Afghan local police and stuff like that. Whatever. There was some kind of meeting going on. And when we got there, and PB Cuba is up on a hill, and then there's like a compound on the hill. And when we got there, I'm like, hey, are we going to be here for more than 10 minutes? Because that was always my, like, hey, if we're going to be here for more than 10 minutes, I'm going to find a rooftop to get on and start looking around. Because I'm a JTAC, I'm a FO. That's like that's my spot. So, hey, yeah, we're going to be here. So I climb up this shitty, rickety ladder to get up on this, like, rooftop. And before, this rooftop had two big things of sandbags on each corner where there was a post on each corner, basically, and like a plywood and stuff like that built up so the Afghan soldiers could sit up there as kind of a to look out on the valley because you could see the green zone. And those had been taken away. I don't know what happened to them, but they had taken them all down, and there was like one row of sandbags laying across the edge of the building. And I'm sitting up there, and I think there was one other. I think there was like a lieutenant or something like that might have been doing a left seat, right seat kind of deal or something. I don't remember. But there was like someone else up there with me. And then all of a sudden, dude, like you were talking about how you felt that round go by. I just feel these shots. And I'm like, oh, shit. And like get down. And I'm laying on my back. And I'm like trying to get behind this one sandbag. I'm trying to get my face below this one sandbag. And I could just feel the rounds flying right over my face, dude. And this dude was on the ground shooting up at me. And I'm like, fuck. And my major, I remember he just like peeks his eyes over the edge of the roof. He's like, Kramer, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, sir. And I'm sitting here and I have the, like you were talking about, I'm on my back. I got my radio and I'm talking to a Harrier. And I have the Soldier ISR, the thing I was telling you about, and I'm sitting there looking through that, and I can see the guy shooting at me through the Soldier ISR, and I'm talking to the Harrier, and we try to get I try to get either a gun run or a bomb on this guy, but because he's standing next to a mud wall that's not even next to a compound, they wouldn't let us drop on him because it was considered a compound. So instead, I'm just laying here. This is in 2013. So instead I'm just laying here on my back trying to be as small as possible, and rounds are literally flying over my face. And I remember thinking, because I had gotten into a kind of an argument with my ex that day or the day before. I think it was the day before, like on the phone, something stupid. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, is that how I'm going to sit here and die on top of this fucking building? And that was the last conversation we had, was us arguing about something fucking stupid. And I really felt bad, but, and it was, dude, it's so sketchy, man. But that was like one of those like last mission, kind of deals. He ended up pulling off. The guy, they wouldn't let us drop. I think our guy shot back or something like that, kind of suppressed it. And I got off that rooftop. But my buddy was like, bro, you almost got shot in the fucking face, man. I'm like, man,
that's a face shot.
Like, yeah, that's not cool. That is not cool.
Yeah, there's a video when actually we're in one of those fights in Ramadi. One of the scout teams from the Army had a video camera put on a wall, and I think I told you before, earlier that day they were shooting at us from just on the other side of the wall, and some of our Marines threw grenades over the side. But then in that video, you don't notice it because we're engaging, but you see two people carrying a body off down a path outside of our compound, and we didn't see that till like a few days later when one of those snipers came and was like, hey, look at this, Cat and Angel, look at this.
Like, you got one.
We didn't see it. We got it, but they were right. We didn't even notice it because we probably saw those guys carrying off dead. I mean, who knows, those scouts? But I mean, it's a crazy world. It's a crazy world out there, and
it is, man.
In those areas.
I'm glad I never had to toss grenades over walls to the dudes on the other side.
I didn't toss it, but they're like, he kept throwing like this and shooting over, and like he's gonna get somebody, throw a couple grenades, and
that's how my fire support officer I had at the MEU, Major Graham, was with 2nd ANGLICO, and he was in Afghanistan, and his FICT got attached to a British unit, and they were like out in fucking middle of nowhere by themselves. And he was like, and they had fights where they were like, Taliban was throwing grenades over the wall, and then they were throwing grenades right back at them. And I'm like, dude, no way, man. And apparently it happened on multiple occasions. I'm like, dude, fuck that, dude. That's a little too close. You know what I'm saying?
Close,
when you're chucking grenades over the wall at each other, that's not. Fuck that. So
you get that urban environment. You don't, one guy shooting, and you're not going to leave because they know you're there. Just throw the grenades.
Yeah, such crazy stuff, man. Well, hey, man, thanks.
I think. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. I'm just going to wrap it up.
I think a lot of it, the the Marines and soldiers just were waiting to throw grenades. Any chance they could get, they wanted to.
Yeah, I mean
wanted
that's
to
one of
chunk
those
'em.
that's one of those things where you're like, dude, that'd be cool to throw a grenade in combat. But then when you get in the situation where you have to throw a grenade in combat, you're in like close in
Legitimate.
fighting, man. That's sketchy.
Yeah.
There's videos
It
of
is.
guys in Fallujah rolling grenades through like holes on the rooftop into the building below them to get guys inside, and just like there was a
That
video.
extra room.
There was a video of a guy where they killed a fighter or they injured a fighter, but he was stuck. I think they threw a grenade on him, but he was stuck between two buildings. Like he got stuck between two buildings and he's injured from a grenade, and they had to finish him off. And I mean, dude, fuck that. Like grenades are cool, but
that's
I don't.
tough,
I don't think I want to be put in a situation where you're actually having to use them for real. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But anyway, like I was saying, good time, man. Thanks again for coming on the podcast. Yeah, just really good conversations. I really like talking about like that old school Iraq, because we talk about the GWAT, kind of era of veterans, but really the war you guys fought in Iraq is completely different than what me and my buddy saw in Afghanistan. Not completely different, but it's just different. And I think more people are hearing about Afghanistan now because it's, there's been more people there recently, but these Iraq stories are important. And a lot of shit happened, especially in like Ramadi and stuff like that. And so I appreciate you coming on and telling these stories, man.
I'm glad to, man. Thank you.
Yeah. So anyways, you're not on social media, right? You don't want to throw any social media out there? No. Mine's at J Kramer Graphics at former
No,
action
the only
guys.
thing I do,
Go ahead.
the only thing I suggest people donate to charities, man. The Semper Fi Fund. I did some stuff for them on some triathlon races some years back, and it almost over 95% of their stuff goes to those who need it, not administrative stuff. So if you want to look for good charities to help Marines, Semper Fi Fund's it.
I've only heard good things about Semper Fi Fund. I think that's probably the one that most people recommend anything on the podcast. They usually recommend the Semper Fi Fund. So
it's a good organization. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, other than that, man, that's it. That's it for the podcast today. So thanks everyone for checking it out, and check out my website, jkramergraphics.com. And that's it.
All right, man.
Sweet. I'm going to